just want to start with a couple of numbers. In fact, they're both half. So half the UK population has an account on Facebook, and last year half of the mobile phones sold in the UK were smartphones. So the speed at which everybody who has a mobile phone will soon have the internet in their pocket, that's coming very close. That's coming very soon. But I want to talk about social media and the web in the way it relates to these three things: relationships, places, and transparency. So let's start with relationships. The woman on the left there is Jo Burrell. She's a community engagement officer for Midland Heart, and she is sitting in what's called a social media surgery. Jo's actually really quite adept at social media. She's sort of taught herself how to do it just because she's a person and she's used it and messed around with it in her own life. And she runs a monthly surgery where she gets together with other people from Midland Heart who have also got skills in social media, and they share those skills on a very informal basis, very relaxed basis, with community groups and active citizens and some of their residents. And what they're doing bit by bit is putting these skills into the community and nurturing a civic conversation for the patches that she represents. So there is the Lozells and Birchfield social media surgery. She's booked up, you won't be able to see it, but she's booked up dates for the next several months, and it's just a committed part of her work. She's one of, I'm sorry about these numbers, but it's in the red ones, you can see there's about 110 social media surgeries across the UK. Some of them are run by volunteers, some of them are run by us on a paid basis, some of them are run by organisations that are funded. She also is what is known as a hyperlocal blogger, and Steph over there is one of the country's best hyperlocal bloggers. But Jo is also a hyperlocal blogger, so this was originally set up for a neighbourhood manager in Birmingham, for the Birchfield neighbourhood, and they lost their job and it sat sort of like moribund for a while, and Jo stepped in and took it over. And it's not very complicated what she does. She goes around her neighbourhood spotting things happening, taking photographs of them and popping them on the blog. When she gets emailed those flyers saying there's this thing happening, instead of emailing that on to 40 or 50 other people, as we all know happens, she stops, she copies and pastes it and chucks it on a blog. So she is taking these internal conversations and making them publicly available. And the interesting thing about the Birchfield blog is that both Jo and her predecessor who ran it have started tagging, which is labelling posts by place. So this Birchfield patch is about 30 streets, and we can see here that there have been 4 blog posts written about Birchfield Road. So if she carries on doing this, you will get to the point where Birchfield itself, the individual roads in Birchfield might have 10, 15, 20, 30 stories about that specific street. And if you only care about that street, you can find them and you can see what's going on. But because she's in Birmingham, where there's been quite a lot of growth of social media as a civic activity, there are other blogs in her patch. So this is Hands on Handsworth. This is the Handsworth Wood blog, which is a neighbouring neighbourhood. And so she's able to create material and share it with these people who can get it out there and get it out to their audiences. And if you're not familiar with hyperlocal blogs, there's a map of sorts on a site called Openly Local, which has mapped around about 500 hyperlocal blogs in the UK. And most of these, as you will learn from listening to Steph, this isn't citizen journalism. These are citizens doing something that looks like journalism, but they are citizens, and they're primarily citizens, or they are public servants in some shape or form. And what Jo is doing by running the surgeries, which is giving away knowledge and creating a place where people can connect with each other, and also running the hyperlocal blog for her neighbourhood, is putting herself in what I call a loop of generosity. And a lot of social media relies on this loop of generosity. To get back, you need to give. If you want to be retweeted on Twitter, but you never retweet anybody else, you're unlikely to be retweeted. If you are looking for help on Twitter, but you never offer help when somebody asks for it, you're unlikely to get the help. And this is not about public service as a transaction, but this is about public service as a loop of generosity between the people who serve the community and the community itself. And it is built on what I call creating a stockpot of social capital. Getting out there, doing things, working with people, being helpful, means that when you in turn need help, you've created this stockpot of social capital and you can turn it into something useful. And Jo is a really good example of doing that. Okay, so places. Right. Okay, I'm not connected to the internet. That's a bit frustrating. I will have to try and tell this story without being connected to the internet. This rock here, this is a photograph of a rock. And a friend of mine called Andrew Yates, well, he's not a very good friend, I know him on Twitter, I've met him a couple of times, went to Wales on holiday and he crossed a bridge and he stopped and he took a photograph of that rock. And because his camera, his phone knew where it was, when he put it on a website called Flickr, this website called Flickr said, oh, well, there were lots of other photos taken near there because it could see where the photo was taken and put all these little dots up for all these other photos. And so Andrew clicked on one of those photos and sure enough, it was a photograph of that rock. And he noticed that that photograph had been put in a group on Flickr. So somebody had created a group in Flickr which was called That Rock Near Pontypridd Bridge, Betsycoed, North Wales. And there were 22 members of that group. So 22 people had taken a photograph of a place that doesn't even have an address, that in 15 years' time probably won't exist. And the internet had connected them over it by knowing where they'd taken that photograph. And it is a really powerful illustration of how brilliant the internet is at places that don't have postcodes, places that don't exist, but how brilliant it is at niches of all sorts, whether they are a neighbourhood, whether they are a rock, or whether they are, a while ago, in fact I think it was somebody who works for Orbit, I was doing some work with Orbit and asked a room of people, does anybody blog? And somebody, one of the Orbit staff put his hand up and he said, I blog. And I said, is it private or work? And he said, it's private really. And I said, well, do you mind telling me? And he went a bit bright red and sort of looked down a bit and he said, well, in my spare time I dress up as a Star Wars stormtrooper, which got that response. And I said, and is that what you blog about? And he said, no, no. He said, I blog about repairing Star Wars stormtroopers' costumes. And I said, how popular are you? And he said, well, there's only 2 or 3 of us in the world who blog about it, and all of us are enormously popular. So he has found a passion and a niche, which means that we think by day he is mild-mannered janitor, but by night he is he's one of the world's leading experts in his field. And in the same way as the internet is brilliant at niche places, very small places, it's brilliant at niche ideas and niche passions. So here are just some other sort of examples. This is the Birmingham Flickr group with 2,500 members who share photographs and have a very constructive civic conversation about the place they live in. But it also starts to niche down and it starts to break up. So this is the Birmingham Flickr group for Quinton, which is a neighbourhood in Birmingham. There are people talking about Quinton on the web and sharing photographs and sharing places. This is one that I'm involved in. I live in Balsall Heath. This is a very simple blog, which is just all we do is we send emails to a particular email address and they appear as blog posts. I was approached by somebody, again actually from Midland Heart, saying I want to set up a neighbourhood blog for Balsall Heath, and I just said, well, don't bother, just here, have a login to this one. So lots of different people, citizens and public servants, all contribute to this. And we might talk about it a bit later on. There's also quite a lot of open data and what is known as data mashing, which is using public information around the neighbourhoods happening through the Balsall Heath blog. This is an example from Orbit. So this is a hyperlocal blog for the Lana Road estate, run by Caroline Field, who is an incredibly adept regeneration officer, very, very strong, very sort of like confident social skills, really knows her neighbourhood well, really understands how to manage community in a lot of ways. And so she will put up information. She's brilliant at myth busting. You know, I've heard gossip that, I've heard you lot gossiping that we're going to compulsory purchase the church. We're not. Can we move on, please? It's the sort of thing she writes. And I suspect Boris might talk about her a bit more, but this is, again, she has an incredibly successful, yet challenging Facebook group around a single estate and the set of problems for a single estate. And they can go even smaller. So this is the beginnings of something, which has got me scratching my head. Keeping it going has been a bit tricky, but again, this is Orbit. And this is a blog simply for the Berlin Court, which is and there are also blogs for streets. But all this stuff is information going into the public domain where you can capture it and understand it and start to make sense of it. So all those private minutes and those private conversations being put up on the web where they can be searched and other people can get involved. And for these things to work, what people like Joe need to be good at doing are these. They need to be good at collaborating, they need to be good at nurturing niches, and organisations need to get better and better at relaxing and empowering people, both their staff and in your case, the people who live in your homes. And not worrying too much about controlling them, just giving them space to communicate on the web. So transparency. I'm just about okay for time. Right, I don't know if the sound's up. I'm going to show you a video. I live very near Edgbaston Cricket Ground. It was there before I moved in. In fact, it was there before I was born. But from time to time, we have big international matches, and it's traffic chaos around where I live. And so the council and the police, sometimes they manage the traffic really, really well. Sometimes they make very sensible decisions, and it works really well. But they also have times when they make really stupid decisions. So one of those is that they won't communicate with you. You'll park your car outside your house. You'll go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. They'll come along. They'll cone the street, and then at 7 o'clock in the morning, the traffic wardens turn up and they ticket you all because they see an opportunity to make money. And so one day, I was really cheesed off about this, and I picked up. It happened to be a flip camera, but it could have been a phone. And I went outside and just recorded a rough bit of video. So there you can see a couple of traffic wardens. Don't worry about the sound, I'll do a commentary on it. There's a couple of traffic wardens, so here's another one, and actually it's a bit embarrassing if you can hear what I'm saying, I'm a bit cheesed off. So here we've got, and here he is, traffic warden. So I'm asking questions, how did it go, how did the residents, of course he's ignoring me. He's ignoring me because one, he thinks the law's on his side, and two, he's got a high visibility jacket on. And he's completely ignoring me. There are my neighbours. It's fairly typical, we all just sort of stand outside watching them behaving really badly. And he's going, don't know where we should put them.
They should be ticketed. Oh, they parked, oh right. They have parked illegally. Hang on a second.
So anyway, they're all walking down the road and getting into their car. Which for those of you at the front, you've probably heard it, is illegally parked. So there they are, 4 traffic wardens in an illegally parked car. My favourite bit is one of them does this, I love it.
Do you know you're parked illegally? Do you know you're parked illegally?
As I said, it's a bit embarrassing.
Do you know you're parked illegally? Good luck.
Okay, so I stuck that on the internet. It was on the internet within 10 minutes of me doing that. 20 minutes later, it was on the front page of the Birmingham Evening Mail. An hour later, there were 2 councillors, 3 or 4 council officers down our road. There were 2 council candidates down our road as well. We attracted a lot of interest. But the point is, well, I mean, there's a couple of points. Organisations like yours are what I now call naked in the goldfish bowl. You used to maybe have a psychological feeling that somehow there were brick walls around what you were doing, but that's just no longer true. And the other reality about the fact that we all have the power to do this is that the only defence against being exposed as doing stupid things is to stop doing stupid things. There isn't any other way of defending it. There isn't any, you can't do that PR thing anymore of massaging information because you're so totally exposed and people will record how you go about doing your work. Fortunately, they will also say lovely things about you. So that, in one sense, is the way in which this technology and the freedom for all of us to publish is driving transparency. And then there's a couple of other trends that I think other people might flesh things out on. Data.gov.uk is a site where the British government is throwing open a lot of data sets. So you might be familiar with the fact that every local authority now has to publish all spending over £500. They're sort of resisting that a bit, and they're doing it in a slightly grumpy way, but increasingly, because the internet is a transparency tool, government is going to find itself having little choice but to reveal information. And so increasingly government's going to do that. At the same time, and this is from quite a while ago, but you will find yourself as organisations under pressure to do the same thing if you're receiving public money. So this is Grant Shapps in September 2010, saying that housing associations should throw open their books and show the people they serve where the money is going. And this is a global trend, it's a democratic trend, it's a technological trend, and I suspect it's going to take an awful lot of determination from the very powerful to actually overcome that trend. So it's probably better to join in and make use of it.